What's good, everyone? It's Adam from iMusic Mogul, and just finished watching the Apple One More Thing event. The Apple Silicon computers are finally here, and I think they deliver on the promise of better speed, better battery life, and just overall a better experience on a computer or a MacBook or Mac Mini, which surprisingly they released. So in this video, we're just going to go sort of through each computer and see what the actual differences are, because they didn't quite explain what was different between the Air, the Pro, and the Mac Mini. So let's just start from the top. Apple computers, the MacBook Air 13-inch, MacBook Pro 13-inch, and the Mac Mini all carry a new SoC system on a chip called the Apple M1 chip. Everyone was thinking they're just going to call it the A14Z Bionic, but no, it's called the M1 chip. I guess they're starting off with one, and then every year there'll be an iteration of a different, faster M2 chip, M3 chip, and 4 chip, and so on. So let's start off with, actually they have a page just for the M1 chip. So let's go ahead and click that. All right, so the new Apple SoC chip is called the Apple M1. It's designed to just give you that experience we get from iOS devices onto your main computer. Now the difference here between regular SoCs and this one is everything is on a single chip, and if you watch the event, they kind of break it down how everything comes together and how everything works together. They actually explain it really nicely, so I'm not going to do it justice. They really put it into simple terms. So everything is brought down to a 5 nanometer chip, and that is the same size chip that is in the latest iPhone 12s. So you got unified memory across the entire system because everything is on a single chip. So it doesn't have to like call this thing and call that and call this. Everything is right there, and it can handle tasks, compute tasks nearly a lot faster. I think they said like 2, or here it is right here, 4 times faster for video processing and 7.1 times faster for image processing. So with this M1 chip, you get a massive CPU performance using a fraction of the power as they listed in the presentation. Again, some of these numbers here, like faster CPU times 3.5 times, 4 times, these are all arbitrary numbers. I don't know exactly how they get these numbers. They're just numbers that sound good. So you got an 8-core CPU on the M1 chip, 4 high performance cores, which really focus in on the heavy duty loads. And then you got 4 high efficiency cores that focus on like the more simpler tasks. So if you're writing in a Word document or just browsing the web, that's probably going to be using or utilizing the efficiency cores. And the higher performance 4 cores is going to be utilized when you're using Logic Pro or editing a 4K, 6K, or even 8K video that they mentioned there. They said it can run smoothly on these M1 chips. And these graphs, I kind of like, when they're showcasing this as well, I'm like, what latest laptop PC chip are you talking about? But over here, you can see that on the x-axis, you get power consumption. Lower is better. And on the y-axis, you get CPU performance. So as you can see, the M1 chip sort of matches out the top of the latest PC chip. I don't know what computer that is, all the way down to 10 watts. And the performance is about the same as this one, carrying probably about, let's say, 40 watts or 50 watts. So it's faster over there. Overall, what you got to know about the M1 chip, it's faster. I mean, you can go to the Apple website and read this yourself. It has that machine learning that we know and come to love from the iOS devices. It helps with certain processes or certain apps that utilize that machine learning. But overall, you get good performance and a really improved battery life. On the MacBook Pro 13 inches, you get 17 hours, up to 20 hours if you're just watching movies, if you're really on a Netflix and chill binge. And on the MacBook Airs, you get 15 hours on wireless web browsing and 18 hours on movie playback. And lastly, about the M1 chip, you can also run natively iOS apps should the developer want to be a part of the Mac App Store. I know some apps will not be available. Like for instance, this morning there's a report that came out that Google is not allowing Gmail, YouTube, and all those iOS apps as an app on Big Sur on these M1 chips, just because I guess they want to keep that experience on the iPad, iOS devices, and they don't want to take away from their web offering, as you can tell. So not all iOS apps will be available out the gate on these machines. It's definitely up to the developer if they want to include it or not. All right, so let's take a deep dive into the MacBook Air. So the MacBook Air, once again, it features that Apple M1 chip. It starts at $999. Now this is the only computer that has a fanless design. The Mac Mini and MacBook Pro 13-inch has those fans. So I'm guessing This has those small bursts of power that I was talking about in yesterday's video, but the sustained power, you need those fans to cool down those CPUs, and that's where the Mac Mini and the MacBook Pro come into play. So we already talked about the M1 chip. You get 8-core CPUs. GPU is also 8 cores. I think the GPU and the CPU is going to be same across the board. I have the tab open here, but I didn't look at it yet. So here is the battery life, up to 18 hours of battery life. And once again, no fan, no noise, just air like that on the MacBook Airs. That is like the key thing that I personally wanted. Now, I wish they used that to the MacBook Pros, but since it's using the same CPU, I don't know if there's a huge difference. I just think it's that sustained power that's required to run heavy duty tasks, because the CPU can get hot, and that's why we need those fans in today's computers. So I'm guessing this is just not going to utilize all those high efficiency, either high performance cores for a sustained period of time. So once again, this has the machine learning that they went into, and that is the MacBook Air. It's pretty much the same design. It looks exactly the same as the one previous, which was something that I was hoping for, a new design, but we get what we get. I guess they really focused on the chip itself, and maybe next year there'll be iterations of new designs for the MacBook Air Pros and possibly the Mini as well. All right, so let's go down to the MacBook Pro. All right, so here is the MacBook Pro catered to the pro creative users. It's telling you it gets 2.8 times the CPU performance and 5 times the graphic speed, and everything that the M1 chip gives you in the Air, and in the Mini it gives you in the Pro as well. But once again, the Pro has the fan design, so my assumption is the high performance cores get sustained use with the fans, because the Air has to restrict that because there's no fan, and things get hot when you use a lot of juice, and that's where you get the fan here in the MacBook Pros. Once again, the M1 chip, 8 cores. I think everything is going to be the same actually on the Pro, because it's using the same chip. So we can just scroll through all this. Anything new that we don't know? Retina display, okay, we're used to that. True Tone technology, which most creatives turn that off, because when you're color grading, that does not help. Camera and mics be heard. So also on the MacBook Pro 13-inch, as you come to expect, you get that touch bar on the top. I've had a computer with it for a while now, and I very, very rarely use it. Logic has integrations with it, but I still can't seem to use it. And I think a lot of people just want to get rid of it, but it's there on a 13-inch model for the Pros. Anything else new? No. All right, last up is the Mac Mini. This was something that was surprising. And like, I guess there's no rumors about the new Mac Mini, but I guess it makes the most sense because it was in the developer kit. So once again, it gets the M1 chip. Everything's the same. It's probably the same power as you would get from the MacBook Pro 13-inch. Maybe a little bit better because the fan maybe is a little bit bigger. But this also utilizes a fan. So for those high performance cores, it's going to utilize that fan for sustained power. The Air does not have that. But once again, I haven't used these machines, so I don't know really what is true difference and how much the fan is going to make a difference. I'm sure it makes a difference on really intensive projects. But everything is the same. Once again, the Mac Mini is the Mac Mini, just with the new M1 chip. It has the same design, and I'm guessing in the same colors as well. So next up, let's go ahead and compare all the models and see actually what is different between them. So if you're deciding if you want to buy one, and if you're deciding which one to get, like myself, I need to get one of these to test it out and see how it works, see what works, and I'll let you know as well. So we got the MacBook Air starting at $1299, the Mac Mini starting at $899, and the MacBook Pro 13-inch starting at $1699. And of course, you get different color options in the Air and the Pro. So we get the same screen, it looks like, 13.3 inches on the Pro and the Air. Here, how about we do this? Let me change this to MacBook Pro, and that's the Mini over there. Perfect. So since all the computers are running the same Apple M1 chip, you get the 8 cores from the M1 chip across the board, up to 16 gigs of unified memory across the board, and up to 2 terabytes of storage across the board. Battery life differs a little bit, 18 hours on the Air, 20 hours on the Pro, and of course the Mini is plugged in. But once again, these battery usage, it varies by how you use the computer. They gauge it on just playing a video, I'm guessing, for as long as it can go, and this is the battery that comes through. The MacBook Pro is bigger, so it makes sense to have a bigger battery and last longer. The Air has Touch ID, so does the MacBook Pro, but you also get the touch bar on the MacBook Pro if you do like that. So the computing processing, it looks to be all the same. 8 core, 4 performance cores. Yeah, everything is exactly the same. Once again, they're all using the M1 chip, so there is no variations between the devices. 2 options for memory, 8 and 16 gigs. Storage, once again, all the same. Display, everything is the same. This is the exact same screen, except the brightness on the Pro will be a little bit brighter. So this is 500 nits on the Pro, 400 nits on the Air. So if you're outside, it'll be a little bit brighter. And of course, on the Mini, there is no monitor. So there. On the Mini, I think they missed the opportunity to sell a more budget-friendly monitor. I mean, that Apple XDR display is really expensive, and I think with these devices, people would appreciate something that was more along the lines of the LG monitor that they sell now. I was hoping for something like that, but we didn't get it. So for now, we still just have that Pro XDR monitor. Size and weight, of course, they'll be different. Wow, the cameras still have 720p cameras. Should have upgraded that to 1080p. Come on, we are in 2020. That should be 1080p by now. As for the audio on the computer, you have a little difference here between the Airs and the Pro. So that on the MacBook Air, you get stereo speakers, wide stereo sound. On the Pro, you get with high dynamic range, and they do sound good on the Pro. So I think that does make a difference, but most of the time I'm listening to a monitor, so it does not matter for me. You get a studio quality 3 mic array on the MacBook Pros. I wouldn't call it studio quality per se. It's not going to replace a condenser microphone, but they do sound good. And on the Airs, you just get a 3 mic array that with directional beam forming, I guess, to focus in on your actual voice. All of them have a 3.5 millimeter headphone jack. And that is pretty much it. The difference is right there. Oh, let's see how many ports we get. So for the ports, you're actually getting USB 4 ports. So in the previous version, we had USB 3.1. This is USB or Thunderbolt 4. So you're getting 2 on the MacBook Air, 2 on the MacBook Pro, and 2 on the Minis as well. But you also get USB-A ports on the Mini. That's really good improvement. I was hoping Apple would include a USB 4 port, and they did it. Really good on that. Really happy about that, actually. And then secure authentication. Okay, we talked about the touch bar Sense ID. And that's pretty much about it. Everything else is pretty much going to be very similar. So really the choice is up to you of which model you want to get. If you want to get the first generation of these M1 chips. It's interesting that it's the exact same chip for the Air and the Pro. I think what's going to make a difference here is the fan. So for that sustained use, sustained power, you're going to need that fan to really utilize the high performance cores on these M1 chips. I'm really looking forward to test results between the MacBook Air and the Pro. I'm assuming the Pro and the Mini is going to be the exact same, but for the Air and the Pro, really interested to see how like those exports were just high performance tasks, how they're going to operate, sustained high performance tasks, how they're going to operate on these two various machines. So that's really what you got to decide between. If you just want a small lightweight computer, just go with the MacBook Air. If you're going to do like heavy duty video 8K kind of stuff, go with the MacBook Pro 13-inch. It has that fan to give it that cooling for that sustained power, but I wish I had got more like info on what really the difference is minus the fan. But that is everything that was announced in the Apple One More Thing event. Definitely a huge thing, a huge evolution for the Apple computer. I'm so looking forward to getting my hands on one of these devices. I still haven't decided which one I want to get because this is probably going to be like a secondary device because I don't know if everything works on it. I might just end up going with the MacBook Air, maybe the Mac Mini, just to kind of play with it and see what happens, then maybe upgrade from there. But I don't know. We'll see. Let me know what you think about everything down in the comment section below. We'll talk down there. We'll see you in the next one. Later. Peace.